Hello, my name is Sam Hill, and welcome to the latest in a series of what I'm tentatively referring to as info bites. Essentially, I'm advocating my thoughts on workforce analytics. Why might you be interested in what I've got to say? Well, that's a very good question. For what it's worth, I've been working in this space for 15 years as an in-house practitioner and for a range of niche consultancies, during which time I've led projects to enhance the analytics proposition at a number of blue chip organisations. With this, of course, comes experience across multiple sectors, in my case, financial services, mining, print and publishing, leisure, beverages, government, and oil and gas. And my hope is that these experiences will filter through in a way that makes these short contributions of at least some value to you. Now, more often than not, I'm asked by clients to talk about the past and the present. What have other organisations done? What is common and best practice? However, just occasionally, I believe it's worth talking about the future of the workforce and how this may alter the focus of workforce analytics. For example, technology or the attitude of the worker, or indeed a changing role for the manager or the new breed of employer. And this will be the focus of this info bite, which I'll deliver across 3 clips or mini bites. So, is this content intended to be definitive or exhaustive? No. Are my thoughts fully formed? They're not. They are simply intended to spark debate. There is just one definitive statement I will make, and that is that the future of the workforce analytics function is, without doubt, linked to the future of the workforce. So don't ignore the way in which people will work, because change is surely afoot. The analysts will be impacted, and there will be a new focus. So on to the content. And I'd like to examine a number of drivers that have, in the past and or will in the future, fundamentally change the nature of the workforce and will therefore, in my opinion, influence the approach taken by the workforce analyst. First, technology. Throughout history, technology has affected the way that work is done and dictated in-demand skills. This from the Industrial Revolution to the ever-accelerating digital revolution. It's clear the jobs and therefore the skills which are relevant in the early part of this new century are very different from those at the end of the last. So just as the mechanical loom destroyed demand for artists and weavers, computer-aided design impacted a whole generation of draftsmen in the late 20th century. And now we buy our holidays and count our cash and buy our groceries online, which is rapidly changing the way that travel agents and banks and retailers run their business, and therefore the skills that are needed from their human resource. However, by and large, I'd say that our available workforce is struggling to adapt quickly enough, and those with those skills are available only at a premium. This is a challenge for the business and should be an area of interest for the workforce analyst. Specifically, the execution of a gap analysis between the skills required to run a business in the context of today and those required to run the business of tomorrow. Where to start? Well, one of the tricks may be to get a steer on which skills will become obsolete next. There was an interesting piece in The Economist earlier this year relating to the probability of computerization leading to job losses in the next 20 years. In broad terms, roles which require a bespoke or tailored approach, dentistry for example, are less prone to job losses than say those which have a more recognisable pattern and can potentially be handled by smart machines, or indeed those that deal with the shifting of a commodity. And this is food for thought for those planning their careers. But what about the attitude and expectations of this new workforce, the style in which people wish or increasingly insist on providing their services? My second proper job was at a large telecoms firm, and I remember being patted on the back and congratulated on securing a job for life. And indeed I stayed 18 years, which is just and only just above the average tenure across the organisation at that time. And a not insignificant proportion of the workforce would have only had a handful of jobs. Those entering the workforce today don't have that expectation or aspiration. A dozen or so jobs in their working lifetime is probably a better estimate, probably even an underestimate. And these guys will expect to have career breaks, to not necessarily work 47 weeks a year, or 9 to 5, or Monday to Friday, or in an office. Now for a while, maybe 10 years ago, these are just aspirations. During that time, managers clung to a command and control structure, and indeed employment law offered 8 valid reasons to resist a request for flexible working. Technology was perhaps not quite there to support flexible working, and employees, for a variety of reasons, weren't always willing to take the plunge. But maybe today organisations are now seeing this as an opportunity, not an inconvenience or risk. By offering flexibility to their workforce, they can potentially offer more flexibility to consumers, and that can't be a bad thing. But is this decision really with the employers anymore? The worker with in-demand skills is increasingly setting their own agenda. I saw a wonderful presentation a few years ago from a lady called Caroline Waters, now MBE, predicting that people with complementary skills may, in the future, cluster together to deliver work packages before breaking apart to form new working groups. And these individuals may have portfolio careers mixed in a core professional activity with continued education or with charity work, even with building an artisan business, which is an interesting nod to the pre-industrial revolution. The Office for National Statistics published figures for Q4 last year relating to employment levels, a small increase in those employed by organisations, a significant increase in the self-employed. Of course, this move to self-employment would include those forced to work for themselves through job losses, as well as those freely choosing a lifestyle, but the trend is there. So to summarise, I believe that technology, just as it always has, will determine in-demand skills in the future, but the skilled worker will dictate how, where and when they will deliver these services. Next time I'll consider the changing role of the manager and the importance of the analyst embracing a universal data set. In the meantime, I can be found on Twitter, LinkedIn and good old-fashioned email. Thank you.